Did you know that some rock stars worth over $1 billion still drive old cars, wear thrift store clothes, and live in modest homes? From Beatles legends flying economy to grunge icons working regular jobs, these stories completely destroy the image of what it means to be rich and famous in rock and roll. Today, we're breaking down 20 rock and metal icons who chose simplicity over luxury, proving that money doesn't always change who you are. And before we get into it, if you want more real, no-fluff stories from rock history, hit subscribe now because this channel is all about the truth behind the legends. 1. Paul McCartney. One of the most successful musicians ever is Paul McCartney. He made a lot of money from the Beatles, Wings, and his own music career, and he was worth more than $1 billion. But the way he lives tells a totally different narrative. Even though he could buy anything he wanted, McCartney has always been conservative with money. He taught his kids to be financially independent, even having them pay for their own school. He doesn't spend money on things he doesn't need. He regularly flies economy class instead than riding private jets. People have said that even at gatherings he hosts, attendees have to pay for their own drinks. He likes to cook his own food, eat only vegetarian food, and wear simple, repetitive clothes instead of designer clothes. McCartney sees money as merely a tool. His childhood in Liverpool impacted his beliefs, which have always been music, family, and keeping grounded. 2. Dave Grohl. Nirvana and then Foo Fighters made Dave Grohl a famous person all over the world, but he never lived like a normal rock star. Even though he is quite famous, Grohl lives in a normal house, drives a normal car, and doesn't spend too much money. He doesn't think that luxury is worth it just to show off. Instead, he uses his money to help other people by paying musicians, supporting music programs, and giving to organizations he believes in. People also recognize Grohl for how he acts in public. He goes to neighborhood bars often, interacts to fans in a relaxed way, and has even paid for strangers' meals without anyone noticing. There is no famous individual, just a musician who stayed down to earth. 3. Charlie Watts. Charlie Watts was the drummer for the Rolling Stones, which gave him access to one of the most lavish lifestyles in music history. But he chose the opposite. He stayed faithful to his wife for more than 50 years and stayed out of the trouble that frequently comes with being famous in rock music. He didn't live in Hollywood. Instead, he resided in the English countryside, where he spent most of his time with Arabian horses, which were his only genuine luxury. Watts didn't do interviews, didn't go to crazy parties, and instead focused on jazz, which was his real love. His clothes also showed restraint, fitted basic suits with no flair or extra. He never accepted the role of a rock star. He thought of him as just a drummer doing his job. 4. Jack White. Jack White's career was based on being creative, not comfortable. He did well with the White Stripes and other things, but he didn't live in luxury. At one point, instead of moving up to a house, he resided in a tiny apartment in Nashville. He turned down modern distractions, sometimes going years without a phone. White's thinking is based on limits. He thinks that limiting choices makes people more creative. He owns Third Man Records, which focuses on vinyl instead of digital, and he records using ancient technology and plays old instruments. His way of life shows that way of thinking. He wears clothes from thrift stores, drives modest cars, and solely puts money into music-related ventures. Fem. Michael Stipe. That's me in the spotlight, losing my... Michael Stipe, the main vocalist of REM, never acted like a conventional celebrity. He picked little residences in New York and Berlin that were full of books and art. instead of mansions. He dresses simply and puts money into projects that fit with his principles, such enterprises that are good for the environment and vegetarian firms. He takes public transportation, backs environmental initiatives, and works to cut down on trash. He left the spotlight after REM and focused on photography and personal work instead. If this is surprising so far, it gets even more unexpected. Some of the next names on this list could have made millions more, but chose not to. Make sure you're subscribed, because these are the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Say, Steve Albini. Steve Albini helped make the sounds of big records like Nirvana's In Utero, but he didn't want to get paid for it. He only charged a set fee for his work because he thought artists should own their music completely. He lost millions because of this choice, yet he never changed his mind. Albini thought of music as a skill, not a job. He lived simply while he wasn't working, mending things and playing poker. He turned down fame and money that he didn't need to keep working. 7. Tommy Ramone. Tommy Ramone, the drummer for the Ramones, never got into the money side of fame. Even though the band had an impact on several generations, they had trouble making money. Tommy stayed focused on music and didn't care about luxury at all. He led a quiet life after quitting the band, working behind the scenes to make records and help up-and-coming artists. He never tried to make money out of being famous or convert his name into a brand. 8. Ian Anderson. Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull lives in a farmhouse in England, far away from the usual rock celebrity lifestyle. Instead of buying fancy things, he puts his money on land conservation. He grows trees and builds homes for animals instead of buying vehicles or houses to show off. He thinks about wealth in terms of its effect on the environment, not how much money he has. Even his second property in Switzerland is useful for something other than status, calm and focus. 9. Billy Strings. Billy Strings didn't have much as a child, which has affected how he manages money now. He doesn't care about luxury. He cares about time, time with family, time outside, and time away from work stress. He fixes watches instead of buying new ones, and he enjoys doing it. Even though he's becoming more famous, he doesn't make judgments based on his status and keeps his group small. 10. Mark Arm. Mark Arm, the lead singer of Mudhoney, never tried to be famous. Grunge bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam became famous all around the world, but Arm stayed underground. He has a normal job at Sub Pop Records, where he ships things and does other daily activities. He doesn't charge much for tickets and doesn't go on fancy tours. For him, success means keeping in touch with music, not making the most money. 11. Buzz Osborne. Buzz Osborne of the band Melvins didn't want to be famous at all. He stayed away from big label contracts, extravagant lifestyles, and trends in the industry. He only does music and wears clothes from thrift stores. The band didn't need marketing or corporate support to build a dedicated fan base. 12. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They are one of the most productive bands nowadays and work on their own. They put out their own music, handle their own distribution, and stay away from established label structures. They keep the costs of touring minimal and occasionally let fans select how much they pay. They also put a lot of emphasis on being environmentally responsible when they make music and go on tour. Even though they are successful, they live like normal people in Australia. 13. Scott Wino Weinrich. Wino was an important person in doom metal, although he never tried to get rich. His excursions are still modest, with no fancy hotels or extra costs. He puts all of his money back into music and keeps using the same instruments for years. He won't follow trends or give in for money. 14. Greg Ginn. Greg Ginn, who started Black Flag and SST Records, put freedom ahead of money. He started his label with very few resources and recorded songs in modest settings. He stayed away from big deals and preserved complete control of his job. He still makes music today, without relying on his former popularity. 15. Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson started K Records as a label that was completely apart from other labels. He didn't want corporations to have any power over him, so he sold music on cassettes and vinyl. His way of living mirrored his beliefs. He wore used clothes, had little gear, and wasn't interested in making money by scaling. 16. Robert Pollard. Robert Pollard, the lead singer of Guided by Voices, kept working as a teacher even after he became famous. He had an unremarkable existence in his hometown of Dayton, Ohio. He still made raw, low-budget music that was produced in basements instead of studios. He turned down big agreements and kept the price of tickets cheap. 17. J. Mascis. J. Mascis of Dinosaur Jr. lives a quiet life and stays out of the spotlight. He drives ancient automobiles, wears the same clothes, and uses the same tools. He often travels without luxury, and occasionally he drives himself to shows. He has always cared more about sound than pictures. 18. Ian MacKaye. Ian MacKaye of Fugazi built a system that was fair and free. Fugazi turned down big record label deals and kept ticket costs very cheap. They didn't sell anything and stayed away from business strategies. MacKaye lives a simple life, rides his bike around Washington, D.C., and helps independent artists. 19. Roky Erickson. Roky Erickson, who was one of the first psychedelic rock musicians, lived in poverty for most of his life. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and had treatments that affected his career. He lost money because of bad contracts and had to live in bad conditions. He went back to playing later with support from other musicians and family, but he never got his finances in order. 20. Mick Collins. Mick Collins, who led the Gories and the Dirt Bombs, had an impact on modern garage rock, but never tried to get rich. He remained out of the big deals and stayed in the underground scene. He lives cheaply, records with cheap equipment, and plays in small places. He teaches younger artists and doesn't want to work with businesses. Collins doesn't see music as a product, it's a way of life for him. These artists prove something most people don't expect. Even at the highest level of success, not everyone chooses luxury. Some choose independence, some choose purpose, and some never change at all. If you want more real stories about rock legends, no myths, no exaggeration, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because the truth behind rock history is always more interesting than the image.